Now I'm gonna blitz through a couple of other helmets of note here in the US. Um, Not gonna spend a lot of time on these, but we do need to mention them before we move on to other helmet parasites. First one, Trichurius trichuria, commonly known as the whipworm. It's got its common name, whipworm, from the fact that when you look at it under a microscope, the whipworm does actually look like a whip. The anterior end is very thin, very fine. The posterior end is thick, like a whip handle. Why is it shaped like that? Well, because the anterior end will burrow into the lining of the large intestine, gets into the epithelium and the underlying tissues so that it can start, parasitizing, pulling in nutrients that should be going to the patient's tissues. We see that there's a high incidences of this in the tropics and subtropics. Why did I say it's something to worry about here in the US? Hey, guess where we like to go and vacation? That's right, tropics and subtropics. Places where the sanitation may not be the greatest, even though we North Americans, we and the Europeans tend to stay in resort hotels and stuff. Resort hotels are relying on municipal waters for their water source, and if the municipality is not quite up to standards, sometimes the water source may not always be the cleanest. Symptoms here will be some localized hemorrhaging in the bowel. Okay, little bits of blood because remember that anterior end is burrowing in. It is causing some tissue damage. And this isn't a single cell organism burrowing. This is a largish, compared to what we've talked about previously, largish worm that is burrowing in, and it is causing some tissue damage. So there could be some blood in the feces. For really bad cases where there are a lot of worms, dysentery. Okay, all that damage could lead to inflammation throughout the entire large intestine. And one of the things the inflammatory response will trigger is a lot of flushing action. Okay, we're talking, fire hydrant level water being passed out along with some blood. Because of the inflammation, there's going to be loss of muscle tone, okay? Not only muscles around the large intestine that should be there for peristalsis, but body-wide, okay? These guys are taking up a lot of nutrients, not only from the large intestine, but they will be spreading into the small intestine. Nutrients being depleted, water loss, as well as electrolyte imbalance. As they spread down, transverse, descending, large colon, they will get into the rectum and they will literally infest the rectum to the point that the body will reject the rectum. Reject / eject the rectum. They call this rectal prolapse. Your body is trying to push everything out, flush everything out, and as it's pushing out, the rectum will literally push out. So what should be inside your body is now pushing out through the anus. This can prove fatal in children. Many adults will be seeking treatment before this, or they will freak out enough because of this, and they will go see the nearest clinician. Diphyllobothrium lactum. Okay, this is the largest human tapeworm. This thing can grow up to 30 feet in length. This is a tapeworm we're going to get from eating raw fish. You go back to the first mini lecture for this section of the chapter. you'll see that there were 4 life cycles. This is the one that you will see that uses a fish intermediate. There will be other intermediates, maybe an arthropod, a snail, or a small crayfish gets eaten by a fish. We eat the fish undercooked or raw. We get the larval stage in us, and there you go. Um, this one is also associated with eating of sushi or sashimi made with Alaskan salmon. Turns out, um, wild fish, are riddled with parasites. I know you're thinking, oh my God, I'm never going to eat sushi again. It's okay to eat the sushi because the fish has been transported frozen. Once the fish has been frozen solid, the larvae inside the fish muscles will be killed. They cannot handle freezing. They can handle the cold temperatures of, the northern Pacific or the northern Atlantic, but they cannot handle being flash frozen, which is how we ship food around the world. So once it's frozen, it's safe to eat. If you catch it yourself, then you need to make sure you cook it fully. And then finally for this mini lecture, Hymenopolis nana, Hymenopolis diminuta. These are the smallest tapeworms. Okay, look at that, 15 to 40 millimeters, 20 to 60. I think that's supposed to say 20 to 60 millimeters, not 20 to 60 centimeters, because it could be long. Either way you look at it, these are small tapeworms. Remember, a tapeworm gets its name because it's a series of segments. It reminded the early biologist of, a tape measure. That's where they get the tape measure from. The tapeworm. It's long segments joined together in a long chain.